Thank you. You may be seated. And I will acknowledge for the record that all board members are present. Good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you. So we'll move right into our agenda, and I move to approve the minutes from the August 19th, 2024 board meeting.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And I move to acknowledge the following Secretary of State directives: Directive 2024-18, Directive 2024-19, Directive 24-20, Directive 24-21, and Directive 2024-22.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle. And I will ask Mr. Pilati if you would be kind enough to give us some insight on these directives.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. And just a couple quick things, or more on some than others. The Data Act, that is something that we did have, our voter registration database, DIMS database. We had to get that updated in order to have some of the categories that are listed in this directive, as far as registration date, the last date of activity, and some of those things, which a lot of those things existed, not in the nomenclature that it is and the way it is now. So there's some redirect. Staff have undergone some testing. It's about complete. Things seem to be working okay. Last time we updated DIMS, I think was either 2019 or 2017. So it's been a long time. So we did not know what to expect, because from previous experiences, we would fix one thing and break something unrelated. So we haven't found that item yet. So keep your fingers crossed, and staff will continue to do their due diligence to ensure that we verify everything's okay with that. General voter records maintenance program, that is not cancellation, that is sending out notice for 4 years from now. That's a combination of the individuals who have updated their address with the United States Postal Service, but not at Board of Elections. And then the other portion is the supplemental portion, which has the look back period of 2 years of inactivity. And then if they have that, then they get mailed out, looking to see what happens 4 years from now.
So this starts the next cycle of maintenance and looking back and potentially cancellation down the line.
Exactly.
Okay, because we've just recently gone through that process.
Absolutely correct. So what we're doing today, we revisit it in 2028. Those of us that are here in 2028. So that's what that program is for that. Then Directive 2024-20, ballot directive that we always get, which defines the order of the contest on the ballot and who will be on the ballot. One thing, and I'm not sure how we handle this, waiting for some information from the Secretary of State. And this has to deal with, we got a revised directive 2024-22, which is ballot form. I think the intention of this was to replace 2024-20, because that's really what it is related to, not 2024-22, but that's just, I think ultimately we'll end up acknowledging the original maybe 22 and the revised 22, because this, I believe, ties to that. And what this revised one would relate to 2020 is coming back with writing lines and things like that. So that's what that directive is. Then there's 2024-21. This is new territory for boards of elections and voters. This is the absent voters provision, and with use of the drop box, in which the Ohio Revised Code defines the list of near relatives that are able to bring a family member's ballot to the Board of Elections. That definition still remains the same. Prior to this directive, an individual, anyone on that list would be able to come to the Board of Elections and put their ballot and family member's ballot on that definition into the drop box. This directive does not allow that anymore. It creates a new form where an individual, if they're bringing an allowable family member's ballot to the Board of Elections, they need to actually hand that ballot into a Board of Elections employee with a signed form. Not a form that the voter signed, but a form that the individual delivering the ballot signs.
Well, can I clarify that? 'Cause
Yeah.
you're saying it doesn't allow, it allows them to turn it in and just adds the form, just to be clear. I mean, it doesn't change the relationships of who could submit a ballot.
Right,
Oh,
that,
I just want to be clear about that, because I was, okay.
but it can't, you can't put it in the Dropbox.
Right, well, you can't, but you can submit it, you just have to fill the form out.
Right. fill the
Okay,
form.
I just want to be clear on that, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, right, so you would have to, like I said, you have to hand the ballot and the form to
Mhm.
Board of Elections employees.
Okay,
So where the Dropbox by code is required to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, once the absentee window comes,
right,
individuals cannot, don't staff that box for those hours, meaning that when we're not here, individuals can only access the Dropbox to put in their personal one. They couldn't bring that of their spouse or their child's to put into the Dropbox. They'd have to come in at time when we're open for business hours. So that is a big change, especially this close to the election, as well as there's a second piece to that where if you are not part of that family relationship, but you are providing assistance to an individual who is disabled, you can go ahead and you can fill out that form for those individuals. And that is something where that goes beyond what in code, what the relationship is of the people who can do it. But through current litigation, it was found that individuals can bring back ballots for those who they provide assistance for who are disabled. So this is something that here, we're still trying to wrap our mind around logistically how we execute it. As far as congestion and flow and all those things, especially with preparations that we put in place for voter alliance and things like that. So this is going to be a pretty substantial undertaking to try to make this a fluid process.
I have a number of questions about this, but did you want to not go through like quite a couple questions about this new administrative requirement? First of all, did the court in illegal women voters identify anything related to the disabled voters need to have a designee? Or is this purely administrative on the part of our Secretary of State, or was there anything, in the court order that sort of required disabled voters pre-identify, or have a designee to complete a form to allow them to deliver a disabled voter's ballot?
I don't believe so.
It seems like this directive and this initiative was triggered as a result of that lawsuit.
Correct, the court enjoined the
Because
enforcement.
we've never had anything like this before until the case was, the judge issued the order. So I'm just wondering, was there anything in the order that indicated that there needed to be some sort of identifier or designated deliverer of the disabled voter's ballot?
No, the court didn't go that far. The court enjoined the enforcement of the prohibition against returning the ballot on behalf of someone else in the case of a disabled voter. In addition to those family members that are designated by statute, federal law allows the disabled voter to have anyone of their choice assist them in the process of voting.
Okay.
And the federal court enjoined that prohibition as applied to disabled voters.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, we have to follow whatever our Secretary of State, Chief Elections Officer requires us to do. But I do have some concerns because there are lots of unattended drop box receptacles. They're all over at the US Post Office. So those voters don't have a requirement that they complete a form to have others in their family, as defined in that statute, deliver their ballot. So this is now a requirement only for voters who are disabled or otherwise identifying a family member to bring their ballots to the drop box here at the board or at a board of elections. That's,
Correct, yeah, I believe in the directive, it says all individuals who are delivering ballots for a family member or a disabled voter may either mail the ballot to the county board of elections or return the ballot to a county board of elections official at the county board of elections office and complete the attestation form. So, right, it only applies when dropping in the dropbacks at the offices of the board.
but the rationale in the directive says the security of the delivery of absentee ballots is important, which it is, as it relates to the use of unattended drop box receptacles. So my question is, well, there's lots of, the US Post Office has a ton of unattended drop box, unattended drop box receptacles, but now the voters who are electing or choosing to use that box that's here have to go through this extra process.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess I have a lot of questions for how we administer this and what were the numbers of, we had a lot of people dropping off ballots using the drop box. So now we have to have them come inside or their designee, fill out a form. How are we going to administer this? As a practical matter, this could be numbers of forms. So my first question is, how many numbers do we anticipate of forms now we have to have for designees? And then as a practical matter, and I don't think the directive answers this, perhaps we can get clarification from the Secretary of State. What happens to the ballot if there's no designee form? Are we counting the ballot? Does the ballot get counted? There's nothing that says how are we supposed to let voters know? That they have to now have their designee who fill out a form and come inside. How are we gonna manage lines of people who are designees of either a disabled voter or someone a family member who's asked to have their ballot delivered here? What's our plan? How many numbers? I know in just a couple before you were.
Sure.
I know in the ballot, ballot collection proposal that's on our agenda today, there is a reference to the fact that there's gonna be additional obligations and requirements for administering this, but it doesn't say how we're doing it. So maybe you're still in the process of giving it, some thought. I just don't understand what the answers to these other questions are. What happens if someone doesn't complete a designated form? What happens to their ballot? Are we permitted to count the ballot still? Does it go in some separate category? We need some answers because we need to know if we have to, which we clearly, it's a directive, have to implement. I don't know how we're gonna administer. How many people voted? Do we know how many people use the drop box to have others drop their ballots?
So. Sure. I'm gonna try.
I'm sorry, just a lot of
I'm gonna
questions, but
try to,
it just,
Sure.
I don't understand how we are possibly going to administer this in a way that makes sense. And my biggest concern is what happens to the voter's ballot if there's no designee form?
Sure.
No 12P form. What are we supposed to do as a board of elections? We have no instruction on, is the ballot counted? Do we put it aside? And then if we don't, if it's set aside and we do verify somehow that these people are family members, I just don't know. What are we supposed to do? Does it,
So I'll start with that point.
okay.
Um,
Sorry, that's a lot of questions.
None of us know.
Yeah,
And
you
so-
don't know, we don't know.
No, we don't know, and there's been discussion back and forth within the Ohio Association of Election Officials. And there is a phone call later this week with the association on the legislative committee to try to get these items down, to send a letter to the Secretary of State's office on behalf of the association, asking for this clarity. What does happen when someone comes in and lays a ballot on a table and walks out and doesn't have,
Form 12P.
there's a form, not a form there, what do we do with that? Does that just go in for counting? Is it put to a side and then is it deemed invalid or what? So we don't, counties big and small, we don't know, because it does not speak at all, doesn't give a lot of guidance at all procedurally on what's supposed to happen with these ballots, or someone who,
For the effect of the failure to complete the
Mhm.
form. I mean, we don't wanna disqualify, and then what if somebody, this is new, brand new, at this hour of as we prepare.
sure,
And how are we gonna get the word out that people have to have the form, or designees have to complete a form? And then if they don't, this is my biggest
Yeah.
issue, we do not want to disenfranchise anybody because they haven't completed the form, or we don't know what to do with the ballot. And maybe it's in some suspense category, I don't know, but it is somebody's relative within the parameters of the
Right.
statute. But now somehow it just seems awfully burdensome to me on the voter. But, maybe once we get the answers to the questions, we can figure out, do we need additional staff to manage it? I'm concerned.
oh, sure, no, so we all are, this was a big curveball that was not on none of our radar, that this was coming until we got that directive on Saturday morning. And, so,
I actually think, I'm just concerned that there's a equal protection potentially issue, but maybe not. It just seems that some voters have the ability to use unattended drop box or unattended receptacles through the US Post Office, and their family members, in compliance with the statute, can drop those at those boxes without a form. But now we have a requirement for these voters who choose here, and maybe that's a reasonable requirement that the Secretary of State can impose. But it does seem like it's awfully unfair that some now can go to the post office and just do it. These are unattended drop box receptacles. So we just need some clarification, because we don't wanna unduly impair the ability for folks to cast their ballot. And certainly, what do we do with it if there's no form?
Yeah.
But they really are having their spouse or their mom or whatever drop their ballot, but they forget they haven't done the form. We don't have any guidance, and it seems to me it's very important that we get it quickly.
100%, and there's been this discussion internally, and that's why there's gonna be an actual meeting of the OAO to try to come as one body and ask all these things instead of it piecemeal, county by county by county, because it's, everything you're asking is what we're hearing regardless of size of county, location of county within the state. People just don't know. It's because it's not addressed at all.
No, the directive doesn't say.
Handled.
Mhm.
Now, volume wise, we're still trying to figure out logistically how we're going to do this. So where we collected most of our information goes back to 2020, that election. And so this is where, a presidential election, you see the most use of vote by mail. Now, in that election, we had 129,612 vote by mail ballots personally delivered to the Board of Elections. So they received their ballot, and those were driven down to the Board of Elections. We did have our permanent box in the lot, and then at Campus International, we had a supplemental collection location. And so in our box in the lot, it was 82,428 ballots in the 2020 November presidential cycle, with another 47,184. Now, I know we don't have statistics on how many ballots each individual dropped off, but I know I personally work shifts in the Campus International lot. And for every person who brought one ballot, there was another one who was bringing two or three in to drop those off. So it was not, I would say, not 129,612 vehicles that came, maybe half of that came. So on average, you probably had 60,000 cars come through here in that period of time. There were basically 4 out of 10 voters who voted by mail personally brought it down. And that has to do with a lot with people's belief in the service provided by the post office, which Post office is great, does good work, but still, probably everybody has witnessed either delays or misdelivery of ballots. So that's one of the things that really drove people was to bring that down. They like the convenience of voting their ballot at home, but they don't want to put it back in the mail. So they want to make sure from their hand to us, and they do that through the drop box. And there is usage of the drop box after hours, because when people, either on their way to work, on their way home from work, that's a lot of times you're seeing a lot of that usage of the box, because they're working during the day. So we would anticipate quite a bit. Now, we won't have as much vote by mail most likely as we did in November of 2020. And that's, because of the COVID factor, but we will have probably 250,000 individuals vote by mail versus we had over 300,000. We had about 320,000 vote by mail in 2020. So what that means is if you have 250,000 and if you have still 4 in 10, drive it down, that's 100,000. So again, I would, if we just anecdotally looked at what happened in 2020, that means 50,000 cars would come, 2 ballots in each one. So potentially you'd have a large portion who would need to park, either not come or park to come in to do a form. Now, we are, the next item on the agenda, number 3, talks about a collection proposal that we want to do.
But it doesn't say, unless I missed it, it doesn't address this issue.
No, because it's still being worked
Okay.
through.
Okay.
And so, and there's some thoughts, I can share those thoughts, to try to do that, but one of the, again, what we've been working on and what we planned for our parking lot is tensing the lot to have lines undercover within 100 feet, to keep people safe. And so this definitely, doesn't help, as we were already eliminating a good portion of our parking spots, for those processes. And, so we'll be creative, and whether,
But given the size of our county, this affects us in an extraordinary way compared to other boards of elections.
well, Cuyahoga County for over 10 years or longer, we are the #1 vote by mail county in the state. And that goes back to around 2008 or so, when we sent out applications to all voters in every election. And that made its way down to then, the state doing that just in even years, but because of that, it always trends high here, no matter what the type of election is, because people have done it forever and they like it and they believe in it, which is good. So we're still gonna have that same participation rate. It scales up, and right now, the applications that we're receiving, people aren't deterred from just turning in their vote by mail application. They're still coming in at a really good clip. So I know I was all over the place a little bit.
So was I,
But,
there's my questions,
But as far as the legality of it, the associations would be sending a letter that we'll craft to figure out and try to address those unknown questions. As far as volume and how we're gonna handle it, we have some ideas on what we're gonna do, but nothing is perfect. So, and the item number 3, the collection spot, we want to figure out how to still incorporate that and make some, and I can explain at that point how we want to maybe collect these ballots with those forms at that location.
well, not in the middle of the street. Cause the directive specifically says they have to come inside of the building I'm pretty sure. Yeah, drop boxes,
It just says given the workplace.
voter assisted ballots must be returned inside the board office, where the voter assistant will be asked to complete the attestation form. That's on page 2 of the directive in the first full paragraph.
And I think that's something that we need to ask for more clarity.
Yeah.
Because, again, the non-lawyer, my interpretation, if they're on the grounds, then they've returned it, but we've got to see if we can unpack that from.
Yeah,
Then what
say,
you're saying, it's
must be returned inside the board office. So that's clearly not in the street where you have plans
These are
that.
questions that we need to ask,
Yeah,
especially from the larger counties that have logistical
Yeah.
problems like we do.
And there's other boards that are creating drive-through collection
Right.
on their properties, which will be in a similar type situation that we are, then you have to address that. Cause nobody has the space or the time or the resources to have all these people park and go inside. It'll be,
well,
I mean, it sounds like because of the case, that there is this requirement now, or, right? I mean, so there's gonna have to be some group of people doing this form regardless of this directive. So we should have a plan for that anyway, number one. Number two, I mean, we're not clear on how many people drop multiple ballots because there really isn't tracking of that. I mean,
Right.
it's just sort of, and, you know, historically, I guess it's an honor system in a way that we've been relying on, and also like if someone's handing in a couple ballots, it's been okay. There have been incidents where people have handed in more than a couple ballots, and I know this group has dealt with it, and it was usually out of just people trying to be helpful, not understanding the law. I know there was an incident, I think it was in 2020 primary, if I'm not mistaken, with a woman who did not mean any ill intent, this board determined at the time. And I know I wasn't on the board in 2020, but we did have observers at the collection points, and there were a few issues and things we reported. So I agree, we want to do things the right way. I think logistically, though, I understand we have to figure out what this means
yeah.
and the loose questions. So I think getting more information is important. I understand this creates different, perhaps, approach to this collection, but I think we can strike the perfect balance of making sure these ballots are legitimately being cast, following any directives, or even, you know, with purposes of the litigation, making sure we're hitting that as well, but also making sure that people understand, and maybe this is also a social media component, or maybe something from this group, like our social media, our networks, you know, the media, having people understand, like, these are the people who can hand your ballot in for you, this is what'll be required. I think, I'm gonna jump ahead, but Tony had related that this form will be included with the absentees, perhaps, possibly.
okay.
That could be something, I mean, I don't know if we're there yet, but I mean, I think getting ahead of it, being proactive,
Yeah.
this group, listen, when we're proactive, we get ahead of things, we do a good job, so I have very much confidence. But also, I think we all just wanna make sure everything's following the law, I know all of us feel that way, so
Oh, sure.
I just wanted to state that, and I do think, you know, 2020 was definitely due to pandemic, I think, a heavier strain on the vote by mail. Obviously, that we had all vote by mail primary, you know, and I know that was also challenging. I think you'll see less numbers this year, but it's still a presidential, and we're still a large county. But I think if we can come up with a plan, I think it does achieve the goal, though, of making sure the right people are handing in ballots, because, you know, that's why ballot harvesting is not legal in Ohio.
Mhm.
Because there are things where people can give ballots to people, or, you know, there are those issues that ballot harvesting can cause in the community, and so that's why we wanna make sure we're following the law.
I think one thing that's interesting though was like, for example, I can bring 8 ballots back. I have 8 people, so I could go there, could have gone to the box with my
Right.
stack of 8, put them all in one after another. We didn't break any law, so it is it's an expansive definition. And so that's where.
Here's my spouse's ballot, they want me to, here's my mother's ballot, here's
Right.
my father's ballot. I'd be interested to know what the driving numbers are for this directive, because you're right, we
Yeah.
have seen a couple of, you know, some instances,
Yeah.
it's not a significant number. There was one big issue where the
There was
woman was
one.
real confused and
Oh.
brought back a
Right.
whole. But those are anomalies in my perspective, and I understand, you know, wanting to be proactive to make sure the vote is secure, but not at the expense of burdening the voters and potentially disqualifying their vote. And that's the question I'm most concerned about. What happens if they don't have the form? What are we required to do? And then, you know, we do need instruction, because it says boards are required to provide the person assisting. Then what if they don't take the form? How do we provide it? Do we print it on the is it a printable form on the website? Do we send it out? If we send it out, then maybe that invites more people to do it where they otherwise would. I mean, we don't have enough parameters. And my biggest concern is that if this we need to get the clarification quickly. This is like last minute stuff, like, you know, here, and how are we gonna timely notify folks? So maybe it's a social media thing, but I'm real concerned about the potential for disenfranchising folks because of a form, a technical procedural issue. They don't have a form.
But the absentee ballot is a form, and if they don't fill that out correctly, we have protocols in place, so. I think, you know, there can be a way where we do address that. I agree though with my colleagues, like we need clarification. 100% agree with that, but I mean.
Our whole world is forms.
Yeah.
I get that.
We do have forms, yes.
But we don't introduce them in the ninth hour, and especially when we have a statute that's very clear that these are, but fine, if we have to have a designee. It's gonna be an awful lot of forms, we better figure it out.
But also I will add, in 2020, before I was on this board, I did report to the then deputy director, because we did have an incident with a large staff, it was very sizable, and the person just collected it. So we were putting a lot on our collectors to ask questions, and back then the policy was, well, if it's more than a couple, they would make some inquiries. So, I mean, I know, I understand what you're saying, I'm not trying to burden voters either, but I think just making sure things are by the book, following the law, making sure the public understands what the law is. And these are, you know, these are all our tasks, I think we can get ahead of it. And once we get the clarification to the questions my colleagues have and I have, I think we'll be able to make a good plan.
What I'd like to do at this
Yeah.
point is vote to receive these directives.
Yeah.
And once we get that vote taken care of, then we
Get more
can move on.
information.
I think the Director Berlani's already touched on.
Right.
part three, and then we can move there. So the motion has been made, it's been properly second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, it is so ordered, Director.
And I don't know, like, again, this is the revised version, if we're good, if that was inclusive
Yes,
of.
it was inclusive.
Perfect, okay, thank you.
Knowing that there may be yet another corrected or additional directive to address the environment.
Yeah,
When is it, you said you were having a meeting or clarification, do you have a timeline on that? Just because that's, I think the answers are next round of
I
questions.
want to say it's
Thursday.
Thursday,
Thursday, okay.
Thursday morning.
yeah. they're not-
Exactly.
And I mean, and these were good questions raised, you can bring that back to them, would that be?
Oh,
okay?
yes.
All right, okay.
Because what's happening is that all the various election officials are just emailing all these things, and it needs to now come and get structured and all
Okay,
collected,
perfect.
because it's a repeat. If somebody says, hey, what do we do when they just leave them here? And then the next one's like, yeah, what do we do? What do we do? And it's just that, so it's like, we need to do this, and we need to,
If you have a plan, about how to, comply with the directive to provide the, you know, attestation forms, maybe you can quote that with the Secretary of State, because I don't want us to be implementing a plan that
That makes sense.
makes sense, is easier for us to administer, to get the forms to voters and then have them come back and say,
shoot it down.
yeah. So if you have that plan, then please try to get that vetted.
And I think, and we do, I mean, I think some of those things that we do want to get clarity on. So I'm gonna kind of keep in the same.
Is coming inside the Board of Elections for me, coming into one of the tents in the parking lot on the property?
Well, that's where we want to say that, the board is right, the property of the board is where we want to do this. And depending, so I'm gonna dive into number 3, because we're just gonna continue on.
That's a good
That's what we have.
Um,
And actually, in the directive, it does say at the Board of Elections, not necessarily from the Board of Elections, so again, we get clarity on that.
Yeah, I'm reading voter assisted ballots must be returned inside the board office, where the voter assistant will
Was
be
that the
asked to
directive?
complete the form. That is the second sentence of the first paragraph on page 2. So there is a requirement to come inside the board office. And at that point, that's where the voter assistant is asked to complete the attestation form. So
Didn't-
that's a problem.
So-
Didn't we get permission though to expand our collection to kind of out the street before? I mean, maybe this would be something similar. I don't know. I mean, that's worth asking about.
Sure, and
You know what I mean?
so in 2020, we did get, we reached out from the Secretary of State, the board did approve a plan to do what we did
Right.
at Campus International, and that was with Secretary of State. guidance, because prior, because that was not the initial plan. The initial plan was we had identified some city of Cleveland libraries.
Yeah.
Some county ones. We got that published as soon as it was approved. It was within that day or the next day, the state said nope. And then we went back and worked and got the approval to do what we did at Campus International.
Okay,
Here's a question too, can others, I mean, this imposes an obligation on the board to distribute, I think, to distribute the forms, but can others distribute those forms?
oh, with the applications,
Or
yes,
however, maybe the parties have to, maybe the
Yeah.
parties have to
Not a bad
distribute
idea.
the forms, maybe, you know, the council members or other groups can distribute the forms, but I think this imposes a very specific obligation on the boards of elections. And so, you know, again, don't wanna have an issue where somehow there's some disqualification because the form wasn't actually given by us to the designee or to the voter.
I don't,
Lots of questions there, but these are the technical things that need to be addressed because we don't want people to be disenfranchised inadvertently.
yeah, it doesn't say in the directive that, so that's a good question to include when you have the meeting, because I think there are, as you know, so many groups who can give out an application as long as it fits the form, right?
Well, boards are required to provide the person assisting a voter with an attestation form. That's under the section 1A, it looks like the very first sentence of the second paragraph in that section. So it does appear from my reading of it that the obligation is imposed on boards of elections, which by perhaps would indicate no one else can do it except boards of elections. So we need to get that clarification, because if we're the ones doing it, or we're the only ones who can distribute the attestation form, it's gonna create a problem. Just given the volume of potential people needing to have others bring their ballot. The statutory folks, and now the folks dictated by the League of Women Voters decision. So lots of questions for sure.
And I would get clarification on if it can be mailed with,
Oh, sure.
I mean, that's a good question too for us, because that is then being provided by us, but I don't know that it doesn't say you can't mail it, so, but just to clarify.
No, we would need clarity because,
I wanna make sure we're doing it right way.
right, what we've learned over the years is sometimes our assumptions, get shot down. So.
Let's not assume anything.
Right, so we want
This
to,
juncture, as we are so close to the election, this is too big of an initiative that impacts us financially, clearly impacts the voters. We just can't have any unanswered questions at this point.
no, and it's. So for example, that form where we had talked about potentially including in our vote by mail packet, we don't have space to add an additional item, so it's reworking an insert that is already in there to make it work. So to the whole point of effort, money, and all those things, we need to have hard answers on that,
Mhm.
because once we have that and the printer starts printing and inserting, and it's not even mailed. It's like once the packets, because some of these packets, right, they're made in order to mail on day one, they have to print, assemble, and have them there. We can't have them going in and opening those up to replace a form and put them through there. That is,
Then do we have to,
nightmare.
do we have to have bipartisan teams inside opening up or verifying the attestation forms? There's so many different nuances that, you know, now we do everything in a bipartisan manner, but that's that extra staff you're gonna have dedicated for that purpose. Maybe the Secretary of State can send out his form 12, the attestation form 12P. Maybe that could be mailed. I don't know, but
Yeah.
this clearly says, yeah, to me, I interpret the language as imposing the obligation on the board, all boards of elections in this state to disseminate those forms when those people come inside the board office and identify who the designee is. It's just
And
really
that's probably the
unclear.
safest legal assumption unless we get further direction.
I think that's right. I mean, my interpretation may not be right, but I think I'm just reading the plain language of the directive. So,
Anything else on 3 that you want to say?
So what everybody, so we can understand what, what Tony and I are recommending underneath number 3 is vote by mail collection outside the board office. And this is to complement the ballot box that's in the parking lot. And where we had talked about in 2020, we were up the street at Campus International. Campus International was closed for students at that point in time because of the pandemic. And so they are now open, but we are going to use that parking lot for voter parking. So what we want to do is we want to actually set up in the turn lane on East 30th, a collection spot. And we've worked with City of Cleveland Police Department, Public Safety, the traffic commissioner on, can we do that? Because anytime you try to adjust a traffic pattern, they're rightfully concerned. And how do we, if we are able to do that, how do we keep people safe? And so we've had conversations with them. We've had the police department come out on site along with the sheriff's office and walk the property. And they are in agreement that this can successfully, safely be done. And that would be by creating a rectangle in the turn lane, kind of, we have the apartment building next to us, so kind of out in front of that parking lot, they would have the concrete barriers, they're called Jersey barriers, that you see on the freeway when people are doing highway construction. That's what it would be made out of, to keep people safe. That box would be there permanently, and then we would staff it here at the Board of Elections during the schedule, which is in the proposal, which almost mirrors the early in-person voting hours. Where it differs is really is when we get to the last week where we're 7:30 to 7:30, we would just go 8 to 7. And so that would be bipartisan teams of employees out in that box. We would figure out how to get a tent over it. We would have signage, we would notify. We would have law enforcement personnel either in the box or near to that for safety purposes. And that is allowable per Secretary of State Directive 2022-45, which that talked about collection outside the Board of Elections. And in a footnote on that directive, it's kind of defined outside. It said in front and back, around the corner, across the street. Well, we didn't make it all the way across the street. We're making it to the middle of the street to collect that. And we provided it to the Secretary of State's office. And what we were informed was that the Director of Elections said 2022-45 is in effect, and that's as much as they will say. So all this started prior to Directive 2024-21 coming into play. So now that is, we thought, well, do we stop this process? Then we thought more no, because there are people who come down with their own ballot, and then how do we work with this? So one of the things we would do is we would print up forms that we would have in that box, that if somebody came up and they appeared with more than one ballot, we could give them this form and let them know that if it's a family member, that they need to go ahead and complete that. Now, one thing is we could send them into our parking lot to do that. Another thing that we're thinking though, is if we can maybe create a section potentially in Campus International, and maybe one of our parking lots that we have south of Euclid Avenue, where they can pull in, complete that form, and then come back either north or south, depending where they are, and collect those in the street. So then we would be collecting the completed form with the ballot. Of course, we need to have clarity. Do they have to physically come inside the building or not? But as we're trying to, what are all the things that we could do, we would do that. We were talking about potentially taking our one ballot insert, which you have to provide the postage that the individual needs to mail the ballot back, as well as some required language that the Secretary of State puts on that, and potentially on the back of that document, printing the form so that they would have that, and we could provide guidance on if you are bringing back one of these individuals, and we list out who the individuals are that you're allowed to do, complete this form and bring it. So those are things that we're thinking about doing to get them that form. So, you know, we what we really don't wanna do is mark off a lot of parking spots inside our parking lot, because we don't have a lot, we need those for ADA and curbside voters, but we will have to identify some spots for that. So for example, Madison, architecture, we always call it the Madison Building still, we rent that lot, and that's right across the street. Maybe that could be somewhere too, where people could pull in, complete the form. Don't quite know, and when we get some more information, we could potentially would be able to put a bipartisan team in that one. That would need Secretary of State approval and see, does that meet the definition of around the corner? So trying to be creative to come
Would
up.
you do
with-
signage just to say like, if you have multiple ballots come in here, that way you could break it up? Is that what you're saying? Like, where those people who have to do the forms can go to that specific area?
We're trying in the R lot or in
Well, it sounds like
rented lot,
in the rented lot.
trying to potentially maybe do that.
Okay, and then just, by signage directing people, for those who have just their own ballot to drop off, maybe, is that possible?
So we're trying to. Yeah, the problem, we'll put signage up.
Okay,
People driving, there's so much going on that
Yeah.
they don't read a lot of the signage. So for example, something like that would be if we have the forms in the box, in the collection box in the street. When we can say, okay, you need to take this form, you need to go in that lot and complete it. Now, whether we say you need to come back here and we'll collect those, or if we're able to have someone in there, well then, and there'll be Board of Elections employees in there to collect. Those are things that we're trying to work through to.
once you get the information,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, okay.
Can you just remind me whether or not, the whole concept of curbside voting to me means that this whole notion now that you have to come in, that it doesn't need to come inside.
Mhm.
It just doesn't make sense to me. If there's an opportunity for curbside voting, there should be an opportunity for giving the forms out curbside. But explain to me again, just remind me how our curbside voting works, because they do come inside at some point, or do they not? Is it really curbside? Or is it, they have to come in, or the disabled voter can vote curbside? So we get too many inside curbside, it's just too much here, and to me, we do need to get the clarification, but I mean, if we're confused, what the poor voter's gonna be confused here, I mean.
That's right. So
So remind us of the
The
curbside
curbside.
voting, because it seems to be antithetical to this requirement that the designees have to come inside to get a form.
the curbside voters, it's an individual who is transporting someone who physically can't come into the poll place. We're talking two people in the vehicle. The driver does come in. And so when they come to this location, they'll come in through the back. We actually have a curbside area in the back. Well, that person will say, I have a personal vehicle who can't physically come to the location, we need a curbside vote now. For here, we will give that person a number, kind of like on the top of the car, that they will go out, get in their vehicle and put that on the car. Then bipartisan team of employees will come out, check the identification, go through that whole check-in process of the poll book, then come back in, print the ballot that is appropriate for that person, bring that back outside, so then the person can actually vote then in the car. And either, we can collect it, well, it used to be, it was that we would, collect it, or we'd give them, an envelope that they could put in the drop box. Well, I guess we can't necessarily do that anymore unless the driver of the vehicle is a family member who's bringing the person.
So just maybe, there needs to be some marrying up of the language around and the process around curbside voting, and this affects the disabled voter. So none of this was mentioned in the League of Women Voters lawsuit. But there's gotta be, maybe there's a way to dovetail, make the processes similar. But if we got people coming out, going in for different purposes, bipartisan teams have to come out basically for the process, but now we need bipartisan teams inside to administer a Form 12P. It's just gonna be a logistical nightmare. I think you identified you were very nice in saying logistical challenges here.
Mhm.
But it's gonna be a nightmare unless we get some real clear definition, and again, what happens if there is no form to the voter's ballot. It should still be counted. We need to figure out, to make sure that there's no inadvertent disqualification of a voter and a voter's ballot. So I don't want to beat myself, but it's just too many, to me, there's too many inside, outside. What does that mean?
This really is, this
Curbside.
is a headache that we, that we were not hoping for, or we didn't know this was coming.
Well, let me ask this though, because I know we're approving this plan. Are we, I guess, how are we doing that? Are we tentatively approving? Because it
Yeah.
sounds like there'll be more information. And then are we going to have to revisit this for final approval? I guess those are just structurally or procedurally. I guess what's our
It
plan?
seemed that we have what we have.
Yeah.
And then if there are any changes to it, then we can visit those.
Do we have to approve those, I guess, is what I'm asking, or?
So, I haven't thought that far in advance, so I think, right, it's one thing, as long as we be honest, is, so regardless of what we do there, we would still want it for those individuals who do just bring their own ballot. Now, once we figure out and we talk with the Secretary of State and they provide additional guidance, what we can or can't do, obviously, we are gonna make you aware of that. Do we need the board to approve that plan? I think the hours would be the same. It's just maybe it would be physically where we would be doing that collection.
More the logistics probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know if we would need to come back for additional approval or
Our next
Come
board
back.
meeting wouldn't be until early voting would have already.
it's on that,
It's the
it's on that,
8th.
it's on that Tuesday.
That's why I asked that, I was
I'm
just-
starting to wordsmith at the table, so I'm trying to think, if we approve this plan and with the caveat that, based on our other information that we received, other directives, we could incorporate that into this plan with that contingency. That's not the thing, that's not the motion, but the thought of it.
Right, I guess my thought is, if we have to get board approval for the modification to it, I think that would require for us to call a special meeting,
Okay.
because you have to educate people on what this is going to do.
Yeah,
And
that's a fair point.
and you
yeah.
can't wait till October 8th, that board meeting, to say yay or nay, because at that point, ship has sailed, right?
That makes sense.
So we just call it, emergency meeting. Or-
I think we would call emergency meeting. Now, I would, and I could be wrong, it would be the first time, but I think like us inserting the form into the vote by mail packet, for example, the Secretary of State that says that's allowable, I think we would modify that. And I don't necessarily think that would require the board to approve that. I think we would be able to do that operation.
Yeah, it sounds like some of this is within your province,
Yeah.
because these are administrative issues.
Right.
I'm concerned that we do not, I think we should move forward with the plan, because the plan, as outlined, is important for us logistically for what we
Right.
intend to do in our parking lot for early voting and this is a complication, this new directive in terms of the coming inside for designees to fill out a form. But this plan, you sort of outlined some of the concept at our prior meeting, and it makes perfect sense to make better use of our parking lot for voters, for the benefit of voters. So I do think if there is some amendment to the directive, I mean, we don't get to say yay or nay on that anyways. I mean, he's the chief
Right,
elections officer, although I do want to have those questions answered, because what the clarification, that we are ultimately given may raise some additional concerns, but I mean, whether we would need to have, certainly could meet about that.
Mm.
That doesn't mean that we are not obligated to do what we're told to do. But so I don't know that we would have to come back and approve anything, but if there are questions around, the clarification and what we are instructed to do, I think we all probably want to weigh in on that. Heck, I would imagine people other than us will be weighing in on this. I'd be shocked if people are weighing in on this, but yeah. But we don't necessarily have to meet, But I think in terms of whatever the change is, but we may want to offer concerns or questions or additional questions or comments, so.
Right, I mean, I would agree, approve, I think we should anyway today, because we have the plan, but then if need be, you know, and we have to, if there's something that you think we do need to approve, that's fine, but regardless, informationally, get that out in advance of the 8th as well.
And the Secretary of State, I'm a little concerned about your comment, I think somebody asked, maybe Lisa asked, was this floated by the Secretary of State's office, or maybe you indicated this plan was, you know, given to the Secretary of State to either weigh in on and or around the directive 2022-45, and you were just told you weren't given an approval on the plan, you were just told that 2022-45 is still in effect. But do we have any concern that this might be objectionable to the Secretary of State?
So we had, Tony and I were in a meeting here on site with 3 representatives of the Secretary of State's office. Lori Baldwin, Matthew Crystal, or is that, who's in charge of election readiness, and then Rachel Hooper and we explained the whole plan to them. They went back, they took it to Columbus, and then at that, they said, oh, the elections director has already said for Lorraine County, who wants to do drive-through collection, that it's allowable pursuant to 2022-45, and then sent Tony, who sent to me an email from the Secretary of State's legal intake, where it's to Paul Adams, Director of Lorraine County, that this is good. So they understood what we're doing. I did have an attorney reach out to me, Sarah Huffman, with a question about a different directive, and I said, no, this is a directive that your office says is standing. Because she was just trying to see, it looked like another directive from 2021 would be allowable, and now I haven't heard anything more.
Okay, so there's no reason that we can't move forward and approve the plan as you've indicated.
For everything that we know, yeah, because I did not want to bring this without something from the Secretary of State, and at this point, just as much as we're going to get that says it's allowable, because I don't want to repeat of the library process that happened in 2020. We did all this time and effort just to have it.
For the collection sites and, yes, yeah.
So, as far as I know, but doesn't mean that after this meeting.
Okay, we're not even gonna put that in the air.
Yeah.
We're good. It sounds like people, a lot of eyes have seen this already,
Yes.
so.
So what I'll do is I'll move to approve the vote by mail collection proposal as presented.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you so much. All right, I move to acknowledge the following resignation from elected office. Thomas McDonald, Bratlaw Village Council, Member of Council, and Jason Shackner, Lakewood City Council, Member of Council, Ward 2.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, all in favor, aye. The ayes have it. I move the certification of candidates for the South Euclid Charter Review Commission, candidates for the November 5th, 2024 presidential election. And that is the City of South Euclid Member of Charter Review Commission, Michael C. Love, and City of South Euclid Member of Charter Review Commission, Deborah White. And that's the certification to the general election and nonpartisan. And tied in with that, if we look under tab 6, it's the same. It's a repeat certification of Charter Review Commission. The same 2 names, Michael C. Love and Deborah White.
Yeah,
I move that as their second, and then we can.
I second.
Second discussion, please.
So why do we have the same, it looks exactly, the 5 and 6 look exactly the same. So I'm confused. The write-in candidates are listed in both resolution 5 and 6. It actually looks to be duplicative. So can you explain why we need to do this twice, or is this just an inadvertent error here?
Inadvertent errors, but actually item number 5 deals to the top box
Okay.
of certification of South Euclid Charter. And then item number 6 actually deals in with the
That's
right.
right.
So, you probably could have.
That's okay. So
Two documents.
So we can do a friendly amendment on 5 and simply eliminate the write-in portion of that, resolution.
Okay,
And then on 6, we can eliminate we could leave the write-in portion and eliminate the top.
Correct.
Okay,
Exactly.
that makes sense.
so we are good on item 5, that motion's in order.
With a friendly amendment to delete the write-in
Okay.
portion of.
Chair accepts that friendly amendment. Are we ready for the questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And then on 6, with the certification of write-in candidates for the November 5th, 2024 presidential election, and that is Congressional District 11, Representative to Congress, Casey Ford, Congressional District 11, Representative Christopher Solanish, and House District 18, State Representative Christella Lewis.
And again, we'll second that motion with a friendly amendment that we simply on the document in our agenda packet, we eliminate the top portion of that so that only the write-in candidates are shown.
Okay, the chair accepts that friendly amendment. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let's have it. Thank you. Number 7, certification of remaining issues for the November 5th, 2024 presidential election. There's a proposed charter amendment of the city of Garfield Heights and a proposed charter amendment of the village of Oakwood.
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Stickett.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
The ayes have it. And on the fiscal services, Mr. Bellotti?
Sure. So fiscal services, we have 4 items before you today. The first 2 items, 2024-0909-06V and the one following 7V deal with postage. So every year in our budget, we get approved for postage, and at the top of the year, what we do is we apply postage to both United States postal account for like bulk mailing of ballots. And then we put some on our internal Pitney Bowes mail machine for when we run mail
that's right.
through. At the top of the year, the board approved a split of money to both of those accounts, but what we didn't do is account for 100% of the funds. Because as life happens throughout the year, we try to figure out, well, do we need more money in the post office account or more on the Pitney Bowes meter when it comes to the end of the year? So what we're doing with these 2 resolutions is taking that remainder of our postage allocation and then just applying it. So we're emptying out that allocation and getting it set. So going into this election, we'll have the mail to pay for postage of both our mail ballots, and then as well as any letters that we send out, challenge letters or anything like that from here, our Pitney Bowes machine is good to go. So that's what those 2 are. I don't know if you want me to hit all of them or then come back.
Kind of
Or,
make clear.
Yes, so we're clear, A and B are tied together.
Yeah.
And so, I'll move to approve the resolution of the vouchers for items A and B.
Yeah.
Second by Mr. McCaffrey, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Bellotti. We can go to C and D.
letter C, clear ballot. This is service days. So when we went with clear ballot, and no matter who the vendor would be, when you do your implementation, you have implementation hours that are included in the setup of the equipment. And then during that time, we also pre-purchased some service days that to utilize for this past March election, as well as a little bit for last November. So we have we have utilized all our pre-purchased then service days that we had, and now this is for to have support of clear ballot for this November's election. It's basically 2 items. One item is having 3 technicians on site on election night. So really it's during the Monday night organizational meeting, election day and the day following, just to help troubleshoot any issues that may come in. And this is something that we did with election support for years and years. And the other portion of that is having someone on site who came last week and this week just to help with the ballot coding. So our staff are pretty much coding the ballot, but it's still, this is only our 4th election with the system and being a presidential. We want to go above and beyond and make sure that we are creating things, laying out the ballot the best we can. And so that's what this is here for. And quite honestly, with the way the ballot is, turning out, I'm glad that they had it here because we had to be a little bit creative with some of our layout of the ballot. So that's what that is. That's service days, and we will ultimately get an invoice for what we utilize on the back end if we don't use all of them. And if we use more than what we allocated, we'll come back and ask for a little bit more.
Is this for Silverback or Clear Valley?
This is.
Clear ballot,
Valley.
we're gonna say, yeah,
Okay,
I think
All
it's,
right, I'll move to approve item C under fiscal approval.
a second?
Second by Mr. Bell, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
And then D, Silverback.
Silverback Protective Services. So we started here at Cuyahoga County Board of Elections in May, coming up with our security plan for this upcoming election, both early in-person voting as well as election day. And through that process of partnering with the Sheriff's Department, we asked them to be realistic on what can they provide us as far as staffing for what we need to do to keep this a safe process. And we asked for it to be real because we know that they are short-staffed and as they are trying to hire deputy sheriffs and they cannot get them as fast as they can. Or with retirements. So together, we agreed that, okay, the Board of Elections will need to go out and solicit for additional services to supplement what the sheriff's office will be providing. And so we did release a bid based on the number of hours that would be needed. And it's a combination of two items that we brought together. One is for the Hallie warehouse, to have an officer there, to make sure that people come in and have a ID badge on, making sure that they're supposed to be there, into that building, and that would be for the month of absentee, voting that goes on there. As we know, there's a lot of, materials there, equipment and ballots. The other portion is 4 officers who would be assigned to this building. And that would consist of, an individual housed at the corner of Euclid and East 30th. We will have a tent, on the sidewalk on 30th, and then another tent on Euclid in the front. They don't connect when you get to the corner there. So we want to have an officer there to make sure that that flow from, I'm just going to say tent A to tent B, for lack of a better term, that goes smooth, and anyone approaching doesn't inadvertently get in line there. If there is a line, in fact, we can get them back to where they need to be. Another officer will be close to the collection site that we approved at number 3, whether they are physically in there or on a sidewalk close by. And then the other 2 officers will start off in the parking lot to help with flow of traffic in the parking lot. And then if a line were to appear on the sidewalk and start going northbound on 30th, one of them can kind of peel off from time to time to help with the 10 feet away from the voter line that campaigners need to stay away, or if the line does grow, make sure that the campaigners continue to move down the sidewalk. So that's what those 4 would do. That would complement on a daily basis. We'll have at least 2 deputy sheriffs here at the Board of Elections. They will be stationed at the aprons, so to make sure that cars and voters are not coming together at the same time on those entrance and exit to the parking lot. And then we'll have 2 protective services officers, different classification within the sheriff's office that'll be inside the building, one at the back, because we have that door, and then one at the front, because voters will come in front. The sheriff's office will provide additional resources, but really that's on it, above and beyond that, that's on a day-to-day, depending on what is going on throughout the county. So what we, again, we went out to bid, we had about, I think, 5 responses. These are off-duty law enforcement officers. There are several organizations where the officers from Cleveland and the municipalities, as well as the sheriff's office, they sign up for work, and then overtime works. Like if you go to Cavs game or a Guardians game, you have those off-duty officers. It's like organizations like this who find the work and we coordinate with. Silverback, and a lot of these officers sign up with multiple agencies, so it's the same pool. It'll be the first time that we'd be utilizing them, but we called and communicated with them. They do provide some assistance to the court system, and had a really robust plan for covering absences and all those types of things. We will be going, I will be working with Tara to go to OBM, and gave them a heads up already. They need to pay for this. This was something that at the top of the year, we anticipated the sheriff's office would cover all of this, and they are not, so now here's the bill, here's the dollar amount. Cause what OPM doesn't want you to do is come and ask for a blanket amount. Okay, just let us know what it is, and deal with it. So that's what we are dealing with that.
Yeah,
Just a quick question, so the resolution speaks to the number of hours, 1,080,
Mhm.
whatever, 88 hours or $85, what's the place, 88 hours,
Mhm.
0.5. And you kind of outlined the number of people, how many folks total was it gonna get us? And you said four.
Four here and one there, so
Oh,
five officers.
altogether. Okay,
And there, and it's, what's nice is, if in a pinch, say for example, there was no one at the other building. Not that I would wanna take somebody, but I could take someone, put them there, it's the same company, and then we can cover that until we had a replacement or whatever it may be. But four here, one there on a daily basis.
and just to be clear though, I mean, I was get a little, little worried when you say, the sheriffs are not, there's understaffing and all that. We don't have any issues around security or our concerns around having enough security staffing for our election is correct.
Right, we are,
Just we have a public record here.
Sure.
We wanna make sure we are not communicating, and inadvertently communicating something that we don't want to.
exactly, so, and then,
Right.
and think, let me build upon that. So for the early in-person voting process, we will be secure, people will be safe, they will not be intimidated, but it'll be a good environment. On election day itself, it's a different story for the sheriff's office, and that people will still be safe, but the sheriff's office for that one day is coming with a ample amount of resources,
Full
vehicles.
complement of personnel
Yes.
and all, okay, let's just wanna make make sure the record's clear on that.
And so
Good, good.
this here, the silverback does not pertain to election day, but doesn't need to, because again, it's a robust, and what the sheriff's office did smartly in the March primary. Went with this model that they want to utilize for November, even though the volume wasn't necessary for that, to do a trial run to get a lessons learned, just like we did. They
Sounds
did
good.
learn a couple lessons, which is great, and
That
then
is
we're building upon that, so. Individuals, whether they choose to come here for early person or the polls on election day. Board of Elections has done its due diligence with the sheriff's office to make sure everyone will be safe.
We have a security plan and all of that's gonna be implemented to the fullest extent.
Correct.
Okay, just wanna make sure.
There you go.
Thank you.
thanks. Any other questions?
No,
All right, I move to approve, resolution 2024-909 for Silverback.
Second.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, and the poll worker department. I move the authorization to pay $289 voting location manager, $79,475, 312 voting location deputies, $85,800, 171 precinct election officials, $792,750, and 150 election substitute officials, $15,000 for the November 5th, 2024 presidential general election.
Second that.
Second by Ms. Chappelle, all in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. And on to new business, and I will turn it over to Director Maloney.
I'm gonna take, thank you, Katrina Curtis, I'm gonna take the first half of new business and kind of talk about things that. Numbers and all those types of statistics that we usually get, and then we'll conclude. With Deputy Director Calgar, to talk about a couple of things that we're gonna do different, or some of the same. To improve the experiences, on election day.
Thank you.
So start off with poll worker department, and so. This as a reminder, Board of Elections is going to start training poll workers. 60 days before the election, so that was this past Friday. So this weekend was the first time that we had individuals in for both voting location manager, voting location deputy training, as well as precinct election official training. We had 357 individuals who came in this weekend to this location for training. Overall, we have commitments from about 3,345 individuals to either be a regular precinct election official or voting location manager or deputy, which is good. The number is that we shoot for is 4,000. So right now we have about an 85% placement rate. And and Henry can definitely, or Curtis can appreciate this, which is good. And now some of this part as well, we still need to get commitments from another 15% and new people. Some of this is now, people are signed up for training, we need to wait for their date to come, get their turn to see if they actually do appear for training. So we are in a good position at this point in time with that. As far as rovers, which is another critical classification that we utilize on election day, it helps with enforcement of the 100-foot rule for no campaigning and bringing supplies when we need to. Typically, those rovers, we would train them in like the last week to 15 days before the election. And it was kind of because all the focus was on the poll workers. Took a different approach for this election, so there's no reason to wait that long. Because we want to know sooner than later if we have the resources and get them ready, and they are not poll workers, so they can train further than 60 days out. So we have, through this past weekend, we have actually hired and trained 130 of the 184 rovers, so we're 70% trained in that regard, which is good. That's something where we don't want that unknown curveball at the end, because then all of a sudden you're changing up assignments. So all things are well in poll worker world at this point. Absentee, prior to the Secretary of State's vote by mail applications hitting our mailboxes, we had around 25,000 applications in, and those are ones that individuals either went to our website or got them from libraries. And in a very short period of time, about a week's period, that number up to right about 110,000 applications in. So people are highly utilizing the Secretary of State application. We have encouraged it, promoting it. We want them to do that. What's nice is it has the person's name and address pre-printed on the application, as well as a barcode that is unique to them. So when we get that, we can scan that barcode, which makes it much faster to pull up their record in the DIMS voter registration database to do the comparison, signature, date of birth, ID, all those things. So that's a good thing. We did have a little bit of a delayed start though, and us trying to put some of these applications in, and that goes back to that DIMS upgrade. We need to get that settled, because we didn't want to start putting information in, do the upgrade to all of a sudden have it lost. We will catch up. No need for concern at this point in getting there. Especially again, the more barcode we get, the better off, because that's a lot easier to make up time.
Is the barcodes on our applications we're sending out from this building?
That's so correct. So 2 barcodes.
Okay,
If you got a Secretary of State LaRose, that has a barcode on it.
okay,
And then, but if you don't utilize that, or you didn't get one because you've registered since that point in time, you come to our website and you can print out a blank generic,
okay.
or you can put in you put in your name and your date of birth, and that'll pull up something that will have a barcode unique to that Cuyahoga voter, as well as have their name and address, and we'll mail that application to the voter. So we always prefer individuals do that. It's more accurate and it's quicker to, because there's less handwriting.
The Secretary of State works with us ahead of time to make sure that our barcode ends up on his application.
That's what I
So,
thought, even though that
that's
came
nice.
from the Secretary of State, come back to return to
right,
us.
it
Yes.
utilizes
Yeah.
barcode that we
That's good.
and utilize.
Quick question on my comments. So where are we on Track My Ballot? We used to have Track My Ballot. People were using that tool. It will be important again I think it's important for every election.
Yes,
Are we gonna have a Track My Ballot tool for voters to use, or?
so all boards are required to have Track My Ballot. And so that will be up and running very soon, because it will it starts off with the application. So that's something where we work with the county IT department on Track My Ballot. That's one of those things where we can't control the inner mechanics of it, but we have had conversations with them. So you will see that go live soon. And we had to get the application, start processing them in order to have that. So you'll probably see that come online in the next week for that piece of it.
And what if I could, we discussed some emails from, or one email from a college student that, I don't know if everybody did everybody see that email? What? Did that just come to?
I didn't see all of it.
Yeah, so what are we doing? I mean, it's really discouraging to hear young people write us and complain, college students who say, hey, I really worked hard to figure out how to get my ballot. I'm away at college. And come the last election, despite, Herculean efforts really on their part, on this particular student's part, find out my ballot didn't get counted. What are we doing to really ensure, or what can we do to make sure that college students aren't left out of this process?
So we want to have calls with the Cuyahoga County colleges, because it goes really to the mailrooms
Yeah,
at these
Was she a
colleges.
I thought this was outside. She was out of state.
Yeah, and
I'm talking
so,
about Columbus Mail too. I mean,
Come on,
can I piggyback off her question?
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. Because that also goes to the post office. Are we having conversations there? Because
oh,
piggybacking off her question.
yeah, so we had a meeting already with the post office.
Okay.
And so when we look at information, I would say 9 out of 10 times, if not more, the post office is getting it to the college. It gets lost in the college mailroom system.
Oh, so it's there.
It is there, but in the
Okay,
internal
that's good to know.
mailrooms at the colleges. So
Okay,
why I say Cuyahoga County is because at least we have a relationship with them. We know that there are lots of colleges
No, sure.
across. And so, I would hope that, every board of elections in Ohio at least is doing that with the colleges in their specific county. So like Franklin would talk to Ohio State and that, because that's where we find where it gets messed
Okay.
up. It gets there and then it just doesn't get out of that mail room or wherever it may be. Now, a college student who's living off campus, I would say they don't have that same experience
Right.
because it's a residential address. It's unfortunately, the on-campus
Okay.
living.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then, election support, as far as poll locations, we have secured all the poll locations for this election. There are 289 locations that we will have. There are 8 locations that are impacted by changes for this election, which touches 22 precincts, which really, when we look, that's good for Cuyahoga. We definitely have had times where we've had 80+ precincts, so a lot of things have stayed the same since March. A couple of these changes are places that in March we had to get out of them because of a conflict with a March election, and now we're going back to that location. So for this, all these individuals, we've already placed a letter in the mail and they've received those letters. The voter information guide, we start to deliver those to the post office next Tuesday. And it also is captured on that. So they will have gotten a personal letter already. The voter information guide will speak to, this is your polling location for this house address. And then like we always do, John Eddie will create a map that we'll put on our website and we will work with the media to educate people on, as well as the political parties, on here's what's different for this upcoming election. So
I'm hoping what we usually do also is in terms of reaching out to the council people and the local political officials in those areas where the changes are impacting. They all know, so they can let their constituents know also. Have we done that as well?
we do that, and I would, primarily mayors in the suburbs and the council people in the city of Cleveland. And, they are good about, because they don't want any confusion either, on election day, so we are good partners in that. Mike Weston, we do work close with them on getting that information out, and a lot of times they put it in, their community newsletters.
Great.
Which is helpful. And then, early in-person voting, we have, we've been busy, working on that. As far as parking, we have 10 properties, not including the Board of Elections, that we have either entered into an agreement or have a verbal understanding for parking for either voters or for, staff. The verbal is Campus International, and that's, normal. As well as, Margaret Wong and Associates, that's always just a verbal agreement with that, but all the other entities are written contracts that we have with them. Worked with Public Works. They took lead on communicating with a lot of those property owners to make that happen, and so we have that document. What that translates to is on a daily basis, this does not include weekends. We'll have at least 250 parking spots for voters. That does not include our parking lot here at the Hughes Building. And then on the weekends, that will expand, and it'll probably expand by like at least another 150 spots. So we should have probably at least 400 spots on weekends for voters.
Okay.
Is that consistent with the number of spots we've had in the last couple of elections? And this isn't new, these are not more spaces.
No, these numbers, it probably falls in line with kind of where we've been, I think.
For the last presidential, we're.
Maybe a little more even because with Karpinski.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
getting
and
better.
so, yeah, we're,
Same number of spaces.
Same number.
Since the last presidential.
yes,
That's good.
yeah. So we, been working hard to try to get that locked in. So I feel good with that. And then we'll start educating individuals up on where the different parkings are, the spots on our website, and then work with the parties and everything, get that out. October 2nd, which is the Wednesday before absentee voting opens up, that's when we'll really start seeing some activity. That's when the large tents are supposed to come for our parking lot. And then after that, every day after that, other things will come. Safety barriers, line stanchions, signage and all that. We want, as much as we can, we want everything to be kind of in place on Friday when we leave out of here. So then when we show up on Monday, close the registration, but again, it gives us another day just to kind of fine tune and
Right.
maybe we need to do something more here or there, or whatever it may be. So,
Can I ask a quick question on
Sure.
plant safety? So we kind of had a plan the last election because there was the concern with the campaigners, I think, also being in the street or, potentially, being in front of cars. Are you gonna try to do something similar this cycle or,
so what I hope is,
okay,
along the building here, this, on this, north side of the building, south side of the lot, it literally is a 20-foot by 80-foot tent. That is gonna be, it's gonna, where your parking spots are, that there is all going to be voter line.
okay,
And working with Public Works who engage in the architect to make sure that we have compliant spaces or aisleways. It's basically, 6 switchbacks, meaning going back and forth like Cedar Point type, that will be on that parking lot.
okay.
And that will be, and the space is bigger than 80, so it's about, so if you took 100 feet, that math is just easier for me, that's 600 linear feet of line going back and forth. And if you were to go, and you go down the sidewalk to the corner of Chester
Yeah,
and 30th, that's like 600 linear feet. So I'm taking all that line and getting it onto our back parking lot. So they're safer. They're all within 100 feet,
Under tents.
under tent, so.
I mean, the voters, we're talking about the voters.
The voters.
Okay, yeah,
So they will be, so the campaigners, if they park at Campus International and are walking up, they'll engage, but then they'll get on our property to get in line, and the campaigners can't.
no, they can't come in line, okay,
And then along the fence on the west side of the parking lot
okay,
will be a separate tent for our accessible voters. So if there's not enough room inside for
yes,
them to wait, we will have a space with a tent outside. Again, try to protect them from the elements, have safety barriers around, so cars and voters don't mix. And that hopefully will be sufficient for that part.
Okay,
That
good.
tent is either 10 by 40 or 20 by 40, I forget.
okay,
So it's a good size.
okay.
So we're trying to do what we can.
Keep everyone safe, that's
Keep
good.
safe
Yeah.
and away from the elements in case rain. And then there'll be a sidewalk again on this side of the building, a sidewalk in the front, trying to do the best we can for our little postage stamp that we have here.
Okay,
Until we eventually move into on the street. So that's the, early in person, so we have a lot of things in place. Getting that all squared away. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, is the ballot. So we imported the ballot, we finished laying out the ballot last Friday. And staff have been proofing, now they started proofing earlier in the week. You don't have to have all the ballot layout for some of the things, but there's various rounds. So you're making sure, for example, we have a round, are we accounting for every precinct and all those types of things? And then it makes its way into the ballot language. A reminder that Brian Cleary is out on a medical leave. And so I just want to give a quick shout out to the ballot team who, why we stress cross training is for times like this, and just, we need people to know. So they have stepped up. They are doing an excellent job. We have the clear ballot technicians on there who's also working with them. And so when Tony and I have been spending more time with them and they got it, which is great. We have had a phone call or two with Brian Cleary, who's making himself available for that.
He won't be back in the time to come.
Unless, he is lobbying his doctor. He is like, this is my go time, I need to be there. And he's a guy who never likes to leave his team behind. That's how all our managers are.
yeah,
But what's great is that we are able to talk to him and talk through some things. So that being said, we're doing well. Now, one thing that that's happening that we didn't want to have happen is we are going to have a 3-sheet ballot across all of Cuyahoga County.
Yeah.
And so, and just so, because sometimes people, to clarify, sheets and pages, this is how it was explained to me, and I think this is a good way. So the ballot is like a book. There's sheets in a book, and then there's the pages. So a 3-sheet means 6 pages of it. So there's gonna be 3 physical pieces of paper with 2 sides, so 6 pages. This is in large part due to issue 1 on the ballot. It is a big issue. So if we go back to November of 23, we had issue 2, which was the recreational marijuana. And that took up a whole side of a whole page on a ballot sheet. And that was getting the English and Spanish and calling the question. That issue, and that was like, I think the first time when we saw something like that. The English on that issue 2 in November of 23 was about 600 words. And so this issue 1 is a little over 900. It's over 900 words. So what we have found is, and none of us who have worked here at the board have come across this in our careers, we are not able to fit everything on 1 page, on 1 side of a sheet. So we are going to have, for the first time, the language will start, the English will all appear on 1 page, then the Spanish will start, then it'll go to the next page, the Spanish will finish, and then the question will be pulled on there. So we will have 1 page where it'll be nothing but text only. And so that has pushed us to 3 pages. So we're going to do some work on educating voters on that. And so I just want to give you a visual. So this is a draft of Strong's Vote 1A. So you have, this is sheet 1, so this is page 1. And you have page 2, candidates, page 3, and then you have blank space because we can't start the question. So now you go to sheet 2, page 4, and you start with the issue. Now, this is your, what it is. This is the English. Then we have the Spanish header, and it comes down. At the bottom, and this will be on every page, this is a 6-page ballot, review each side. So now you go to the 3rd sheet, which is page 5, and you see the rest of the Spanish, and then we call the question down here. Now, they happen to have other items on the ballot, tax levies and stuff, so that follows. Every ballot in the county will have the arts and levy, or I'm sorry, arts and culture. So that'll be on there, so it'll just all keep going. So that means it's, there's just different with when you have a 3-sheet, 6-page ballot, it impacts processing time. So that's, it's just that many more sheets that you have to scan, remove stubs from, and all those types of things. So we have that domino effect as well as quantities. So when we ship ballots out to a location, we're definitely, we always want to be mindful of the poll workers and how much they can lift. So we're going to, we were creative in March because we're not going to run out of ballots. But we also want to make sure that we have enough pre-printed out in the field, so we'll have a plan to make sure that we're able to get ballots. Then, of course, the more ballots you have out in the university, I get all of them back, and we will be paying more attention to the scanner cans, because you're putting more pieces of paper in there, so as far as filling up and emptying out throughout the day, we had already planned to do that once in the day. That might turn out to be automatically being twice in the day, just to make sure that we're doing that with all the volume stuff. So, this is the best we can do. And we have made the Secretary of State's office aware of what this is, because again, we've never had it where we couldn't call the question on the same right where it was. And again, we got a Secretary of State response that, Tony's interpretation is correct. So there's nothing else we can do.
No, very definitive response. I have
Sure.
a question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we definitely gotta get out ahead of this in terms of educating the voters, and, there's not any remainder of page left intentionally blank, so when
Yeah.
people see gaps, they're gonna be looking for, where the heck is where am I voting? But my real question, I know you guys are gonna get ahead of that, making sure, and for the Spanish speaking folks as well. Here's a question, though, whenever we have these, multi-page ballots, there's an issue around capacity in the machines. Are we clear with the voting equipment folks? If they run the 3 pages, are we gonna have any issues? Because the more paper we put in these machines, there's always the scanning, it's sometimes it's people rushing and the excitement of voting, I get it, but it always seems like the more volume we have, the more paper we are putting in ballots we're putting into the machines, there's a potential for the machine stopping because they're jammed.
Mhm.
So are we working with Clear Ballot and working with our provider or vendor to make sure we can conveniently at a reasonable clip have voters input those ballot pages in without causing some problem with the machines?
So, I'll go ahead on two points. As far as we started training poll workers and voters in March to pause between page 1 and 2. We need to continue to do that. And because now there's just an increased opportunity, because you do get anxious. We have placed, when you flip open the screen, we have signage here that instructs them to pause. I can't remember exactly what it says, but it's pause and wait. And we'll be stressing, well, one, we'll be educating the voters, you need to wait and pause, and we created a video for that last time, and we'll be pushing that out. But the scanner poll worker, sometimes people think, well, that's the cake job. No, they need to do their job.
Yeah.
They need to collect those stubs, but they also need to, from a distance,
Right.
5 feet away, hold on, and do that. So we do, it's voter education, getting out. There's really nothing much we can do. And the reason that it pauses so much is because now versus the previous, it is taking a ballot image.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's processing time, because it's taking a picture of the front and back, where before you didn't do that.
Right.
So that's one piece of it. Capacity wise, that a machine can take 10,000 sheets of paper. So that's what those are geared up. So we always have more than one machine in a location. There is a counter on the screen that will tell you how many things have gone through. Poll workers will be monitoring that throughout the day to see what that is. And I think we're gonna have a set time, we're gonna have them check and see what is that number, to look for that. Now, 10,000 divided by 3 is, whatever that is, 33. So that's how many ballots can go through that machine. And so another thing that poll workers, they're already trained, but they're really gonna have to do this is individuals tend to always go to the first machine. So if you have a bank of 3, they're gonna really have to push them, or at some point, they're gonna have to shuffle them. And take this out of the first one and put it to the end and then slide them down to make sure we are trying to evenly distribute amongst the machines.
So we're more proactive to manage the three-page ballots up a lot.
Yes, it is.
So, okay.
So,
Are we having student poll workers in this election?
yes,
Okay, so that gives us an extra resource potentially, so we can have another resource on Judge 3. Make sure that we had somebody there, so one person is not just trying to man 6 machines.
yes,
So we could potentially add another resource.
yes, because we need to have people on there, because it creates, it's avoidable. If we are providing good guidance to them at the polls, and if, we put forth efforts to try to educate in advance, we know we're not gonna get across to everybody. So then what happens is election day, when it's go time, we need those people to, not just sit down there, they need to be actively engaged in the process to help keep that flowing. So for my portion, those were the main things that I wanted to, get on. I don't know if there's any questions on any of that, any additional?
Right there.
All right.
All right, well, I just wanna, thank you, Director Curlati. I just wanted to highlight and update you on a few of the voter education initiatives and election day improvements we have going forward for the November 5th presidential election. As we know, and as we've seen today, voter education is a year-round process, and as we saw today, ever growing. Yeah. So the first one is the library education series. In addition to the election integrity series that we started this summer, which was very successful, which highlighted a lot of the checks and balances that we have here at the Board of Elections for voter registration, voting by mail, voting on election day in the drop box. Our community outreach department has been out into the community, going to various festivals and home days and other functions, educating voters. In addition to that, we know that there's a lot of people who have not voted since the last presidential election. But in addition, since even the last gubernatorial election, we've had big changes here in Cuyahoga County. Since after 2022 was when we implemented our new voting equipment, our clear ballot equipment. So for many voters, it'll be the first time that they see it. Now, from a voter experience standpoint, it's still a scanner, it still received the optical scan ballot that they had before. But again, to educate voters and prepare them for that. Also, we have new photo ID requirements that weren't in place before. So we want to have voter education to inform voters to make sure that they bring their photo ID to the polling location on election day if they choose to vote in person. As part of that, the outreach department will be having our library education series. It includes, they're including 10 libraries that they'll be visiting. This will be the third week in September, which would be September 24th through the 27th. Those libraries include Rocky River, Strongsville, Brecksville, Solon, Beechwood, Mayfield, East Cleveland, and 3 additional locations in Cleveland. So it's a good spread of the entire county. And during that time, voters will be educated on our new voting equipment and some of the things that even came up today regarding the acetation for the drop box, the additional pages for voting issue 1 and so forth. We'll be working with the media as normal, working with them to promote those days, also publicize it on social media, working with our municipal partners and local political parties. The next thing is polling location message boards. As you recall, in July, Directive 2024-09, the Secretary of State's office provided funding to boards of elections for the administration, readiness and preparedness for the November 5th general election. Cuyahoga County received $109,000 for that. We're using those funds to purchase new poll worker manuals, also additional laptops for our trainers, equipment rentals for the bands, but also we're gonna use some of it also for the election day experience for voters. So on election day, poll workers take, and Terry will recall, you take sheets of paper and signage that we normally would that we're required to provide at the polling location, and they would tape them up on walls at different areas, and you try to have it as close to the check-in table as possible. Those pieces include what is acceptable ID, the voting hours for election day, cure period information. Also just a reminder that the polling location is a campaign-free zone. So
Yeah.
people need to remove any type of t-shirts and buttons and things like that as they enter. So what we're doing is we're taking a portion of that administration readiness grant funds, and we're gonna be purchasing, now we haven't got the final, these went out on bid. We'll be getting it, but what this is, it's collapsible, it folds down into a tube, and the poll workers are able to construct it, and on it, they'll be able to insert multiple of these not handout sheets, display pieces, so that when the poll worker comes, rather than having to walk over there to the wall, we'll be able to have this at the check-in table for them to be able to view. Again, nothing new in the sense that the information is information that we're already providing, but it's a little bit more of a one-stop area. Now, unfortunately, we won't be able to get all our pieces into this at this time, but again, some of the more important things, and then additional things like maybe notifying voters regarding the 3-page ballot, that, hey, you'll have to look for the vote yes or no will be on a separate page, those types of things. So, for us, we wanted something that would be easy to assemble, can be placed closer to the check-in table, and can be a one-stop, or at least a single spot where they can get a lot of the information.
And I can, so I'm just gonna piggyback real quick. And actually what we're doing, we're preloading it here. So every board,
Oh, that's nice.
every poll place is gonna have the exact same items in the exact same location, so. The poll worker, so for example, we wanna have something that talks about, please be aware, issue 1 continues onto a separate page. It's gonna be in the same spot in every one, and the poll workers can do that, and people can self-serve some of that. Or if you voted provisionally today and did not provide ID, you need to appear at the Board of Elections to cure your ballot. Please call 443-8683. So we want some of those things that are not Secretary of State required signage, but it's things that we want to educate the voter, and then also help the poll workers, because they can point people to the sign too and say, make sure you read all that kind of stuff. So it's a combination of things.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna suggest if you're not now, which you maybe are when you're training the poll workers, especially people that check in people, they're valuable on your 3-page ballot as well. Ones that are real proactive, they're gonna hand the ballot and say, this is 3 sheets, both sides, just the more you say, like,
Yes.
loading the scanners,
Mhm.
give us more help.
Right.
Oh, definitely. You have a lot of people who, the last time they voted was 4 years ago, and they don't remember what's going on, and so
Yeah.
those nice reminders.
I just, and this is great, to have that, at the polling location, but I see we have media partners here, and I know our community outreach, Jazzy Mike sitting over there does a great job. If we have a checklist, a very short checklist, or maybe it's not so short, of the key changes, the real things that we want folks to be paying attention to, can we make sure we're getting that to our media partners well in advance to make sure that they're able to, do whatever stories or disseminate the information, in the best way? So we're not only relying, I know we're not gonna only rely on the signage at the polling location on home. But we're getting close, and to the extent that, you know, these key changes, the 3-page ballot, make sure, some of those reminders, if we have a checklist of some sort that we can get to the media partners about, you know, Ohio reminders about Ohio, about the ID requirements and those things, it just would be helpful, and that way they can get a jump on helping us alert and educate the voters. That would be something I would just suggest.
No, I agree with that, and, at least one person's already taken stuff on their offer, John Casa, Channel
Oh,
Five.
that's good.
Is gonna, I met with him last week and he put something out this past Sunday, and he and I are gonna be meeting once or twice per week on specific items. This last time was registration, and we'll be talking about vote by mail and this and that, and so that's just one, there's more
We
media
got Channel
outlets.
5, but we got 19,
Oh, exactly.
we got all kinds of media partners. So if we can maybe
Media all.
engage them all in some way and with a real significant, you know, a checklist of the key things that are gonna be different. To do that voter education, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, bullets to them maybe.
Yeah, forwarded items or
Yeah.
I'll be resurrecting my Facebook Lives,
something.
you
Okay.
know, which, and on those, we try to do, one topic, and one of the beauties of them is not that we don't love seeing the media in person, but they do take those. And then all of a sudden, they take that topic, and the next thing you know, and they make it, yeah, like, oh, look at that, this and that, so.
Some of us are not on Facebook, so there are people, who, you know, believe it or not, we're not on Facebook.
yeah, no.
So,
But that's how they
yeah,
do.
I hate to make that admission.
Well, the only Facebook I do is here, but what's nice is so that they do take that, and then they do put it on 3, 5, 8, 19. So it's that like anything, it's a layered approach.
Yeah,
yeah,
Right,
great.
try to get it out all different ways.
Wonderful.
And the last piece was, you know, as you know, well, curbside voting was initially introduced in Ohio legislatures for, because there was a time where not all our polling locations were ADA accessible. So curbside voting was first introduced. Since then, all polling locations are required to be ADA accessible. But curbside voting is still available for people who might not be able to enter into the polling location, and it does give them an opportunity to be able to vote from their car. So what we had done is we had a sign that would either be, again, taped to the wall or possibly put on the door. So again, taking some of those readiness dollars, we're just, again, nothing too earth shattering or too different, but again, little ways that improve the voter experience. We'll have portable easels that be able to be broken down and have the steps for when, as Tony said, 2 people come together, the first person comes inside to notify the poll workers that rather than looking around, we will be able to have an easel that will be stationed right in front of the door, right by the door, that will have the simple steps of what they need to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And, you know, and again, remind people that curbside voting is for people who physically can't get in. It's not a way of drive-through voting or a method to kind of try and negotiate the line to work your way up, but it is a way for voters in all situations to be able to vote at the polls. So again, we wanted to, and then one thing we're adding with this is we are including a phone number. So although the steps are very clear and people don't need to call in order to exercise their curbside voting, we are providing a phone number there that if they have some questions about it, we'll have people who will have lines that will be dedicated to answer any questions, or if necessary, we can contact the rover or the polling location manager and contact with them if some aspect of it is not being performed correctly. So again, nothing new in the sense of a different thing as much as it is an improvement of the processes that we're always looking to do. So
Okay.
that's it.
Great.
We have any questions? And I just want to thank the staff, you know, ad nauseum, I used to always say,
Yeah,
voter education and poll worker training need to be aligned. We have those knowledge base on both sides of the table, so I thank you for making that a priority. That helped us.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. I have a resolution here that I will not share in its entirety because she's absent. But we want to congratulate and acknowledge Donna R. Hope for her 12 years of service to the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. She is retiring. She joined us as a temporary employee in the ballot preparation and tabulation division, and eventually transitioned to full-time in 2019. So on behalf of my fellow board members, the director and deputy director, we commend her for her work here, a valuable asset, and she will be missed. And we ask God's blessings upon her as she moves into retirement. So let's give her a round of applause. We can see this Thank you. Congratulations, and we will adopt this resolution on this 9th day of September 2024 by common consent. The chair has not received any requests for public comment. Is there any other business that needs to be resolved? Director.
Just a question.
Madam Chappelle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Will we be getting a revised schedule of meetings? You had mentioned, or I think I saw an email around, there may be a need for there's going to be expedited certification of the November 5th results. And so we'll have a different meeting schedule at that point.
We will, yes. And that was my sticky note question I was just gonna bring up.
Oh, okay.
One thing that, so the one director that we acknowledged earlier today does put an expedited schedule, so it takes the 3-week window, makes it a 2-week window. Which is
Do we know why?
lots of home runs.
Do we know why that change is being made?
So in the directive, it talks about
I didn't see it.
potentially, if there were to be a statewide recount, to be able to allow time for that to be conducted and certify results for federal offices based on that timeline. Okay. So that being the case, that is, it just creates a lot more work to try to cram 3, because we take every minute of it and get it done. That being said, we always comply with directives, we will do that. So we, November 20th, that's gonna be our certification meeting. So that is one.
For sure.
For sure, for positive. That is the last day you can go. Is the 20th again, so it will be that. So that's one that I ask for you to pencil in on your calendars.
Not the 26th.
Not
the 26th. November 20th, what day is it?
It is a
That's a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday.
So we were going to do this on November 26th. You can erase the 26th off your schedules. And that 26th now becomes November 20. As of now, I'm assuming 9:30 still, so we'll confirm that. We have to report our results by 2 p.m. that day. So I would say if you would, mark off 9:30 on Wednesday the 20th.
And delete the 26th.
And delete the 26th.
20th.
Now, the 18th, I'm gonna ask you, just keep that on there. You're probably not gonna do it, probably gonna delete that, but it doesn't hurt to just
Okay.
keep it on. So the 18th initially was the meeting in which the board comes back and determines what provisionals are valid for open and not. It will physically not be possible to get that on 18th and open those, scan those, because if history repeats itself, we are looking at about 20,000 provisional ballots. So more than likely the 18th will be gone. When we're going to do that, we actually have a conversation this afternoon, start talking about that with the staff. It will probably be either the Thursday, Friday, or Saturday of the week before. And what
14th.
14th, 15th, or
Yeah.
16th.
So some of the things that I need to talk through staff with are, okay, taking 20,000, how long will it take you to scan those through a central count scanner for that part? And so that's the ballot department, then assigning, how long is it gonna take you to open a 3-page ballot? 20,000 to get that prepped to do that. So starting to come through some of our, look at our benchmarks and see what we can do. And then hone in on what we do there. I will guess, it's just that a guess, that when we certify, we may not get the nice report that we typically get with all we'll get some of it, but like historical data, we may not get all that because we will be working that Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to get there. But if we can, we will. And if we don't have all of it for that, we will get it to you post. So we will do what we can with that. So I will get you in short order, whatever that means, hopefully by Friday, what the provisional opening meeting is for that, but definitely, so it'll be the 20th and something else. And then we'll have to figure out, and I haven't even started thinking about this, there's the whole, whatever date the meeting would be for, say, the audit, this or that may change, because that was based off of the 26th
Yeah.
date, but I haven't even started thinking, but we'll get you there.
As long as it's not gonna be on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, no, it doesn't look like it.
Unless you're all eating,
Oh.
cooking and
I mean,
I'm.
tentatively the
No,
15th.
it would,
Yeah, I'm just,
yeah, I know,
Yeah, okay,
14, 15.
14, 15, around then, we probably what we're looking at.
Thursday, Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, okay.
But just depending on, I wanna give them as much time to do the
Yeah.
provisional research that they need to.
Sure.
Cause we're already gonna be cutting. I mean, the reality of it is, you lose a third, you know, sometimes things that you triple check, you can only double check. And so we gotta figure those types of things out and we will deliver. We always do the best election that we can, it's unfortunate, and sometimes you might have to cut something because of time.
Any other business before us? Thank you all. I move to adjourn.
All right.
second.
Second by Mr. Pell, all in favor, aye?
Hi,
Aye, ayes have it. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
thank you.